O Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9. Text 40, it's prose. Tribhuvanatma Bhavana Trivikrama Trinayana Triloka Manohara Nubhava Tavaiva Vibhutayo Ditija Danujadayash Chapi Tesham Upakrama Samayoyam Iti Swatma Mayaya Suranara Miriga Mishrita Jalachara Kritibhiryata Paradham Dandam Dandadhara Dadharta Evam Enamapi Bhagavan Jahi Twashtram Uttayadi Manyase. Word to word meaning Tri Bhuvana Atma Bhavana. Oh, you don't have your phone today. O Lord, you are the shelter of the three worlds, because you are the super soul of the three worlds. Trivikrama, O Lord who assumes the form of Vamana, your power and opulence are distributed throughout the three worlds. Trinayana, O maintainer and seer of the three worlds. Triloka Manohara Anubhava, O you who are perceived as the most beautiful within the three worlds. So you see a little common theme here, right? The three worlds. Their desire is starting to come out. The three worlds. Their interest, what they're actually praying to him for, is coming out. Tava, of you. Eva, certainly. Vibhutaya, the expansions of energy. Diti Jadhanuja Adhaya, the demoniac sons of Diti and the Danavas, another type of demon. Cha and Api, also the human beings. Tersham, of all of them. Upakrama Samaya, the time of enterprise. Ayam, this. Iti, thus. Swa Atma Mayaya, by your own energy. Suranara Migra Mishrita, Jalachara Akritibi, with different forms like those of the demigods, human beings, animals, mixtures, and aquatics. The incarnations of Vamana, so that's amongst the demigods. Lord Ramchandra and Krishna, that's the human beings. Varaha, animals. Hayagriva Nrsimha, mixtures. Matsya and Kurma, the aquatics. So these are incarnations like that. Yata aparadham, according to their offenses. Dandam, punishment. Dandadhara, O supreme chastiser. Dadharta, you awarded. Evam, thus. Enam, this one. Vitrusura, Api, also. Bhagavan, O Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jahi, kill. Twashtam, the son of Twashta. Uta, indeed. Yadimanyase, if you think it proper. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jaya. Translation, O Lord, O personified three worlds, Father of the three worlds, O strength of the three worlds, in the form of the Vamana incarnation, O three-eyed form of Nishingadev, O most beautiful person within the three worlds. Everything and everyone, including human beings, and even the Daitya demons and the Danavas, is but an expansion of your energy. O supremely powerful one, you have always appeared in your forms as the various incarnations to punish the demons as soon as they become very powerful. You appear as Lord Vamanandev, Lord Ram, and Lord Krishna. You appear sometimes as an animal like Lord Boar, sometimes a mixed incarnation like Lord Nishingadev and Lord Hayagriva, and sometimes an aquatic like Lord Fish and Lord Tortoise. I never heard that language used before. Lord Fish and Lord Tortoise. Assuming such various forms, you have always punished the demons and Danavas. We therefore pray that your Lordship appear today, appear today as another incarnation, if you so desire, to kill the great demon Vitrasura. Purport. There are two kinds of devotees, known as Sakama and Akama. Pure devotees are Akama, whereas devotees in the upper planetary systems, such as the demigods, are called Sakama, because they still want to enjoy material opulence. Because of their pious activities, the Sakama devotees are promoted to the higher planetary systems, but at heart they still desire to lord it over the material resources. The Sakama devotees are sometimes disturbed by the demons and Rakshasas, when the Lord is so kind that he always saves them by appearing as an incarnation. The Lord's incarnations are so powerful that Lord Vamandev covered the entire universe with 2 steps and therefore had no place for his 3rd step. The Lord is called Trivikrama because he showed his strength by delivering the entire universe with merely 3 steps. The difference between Sakama and Akama devotees is that when Sakama devotees, like the demigods, fall into difficulty, they approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead for relief, whereas Akama devotees, even in the greatest danger, never disturb the Lord for material benefits. Even if an Akama devotee is suffering, he thinks this is due to his past impious activities and agrees to suffer the consequences. He never disturbs the Lord. Sakama devotees immediately pray to the Lord as soon as they are in difficulty. But they are regarded as pious because they consider themselves fully dependent on the mercy of the Lord. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 14, Verse 8, Tate nukampam samikshamano bunjana evatma kritam vipakam hridvak vapubhir vidadhan namaste jiveta yo muktipade sadaya bhak. Even while suffering in the midst of difficulties, devotees simply offer their prayers and service more enthusiastically. In this way, they become firmly fixed in devotional service and eligible to return home back to Godhead without a doubt. Sakama devotees, of course, achieve from the Lord the results they desire from their prayers, but they do not immediately become fit to return to Godhead. It is to be noted herein that Lord Vishnu, in his various incarnations, is always a protector of his devotees. Srila Madhvacharya says, Vividham bhava patratvat sarve vishnur vibhutayaha. Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. Krishna is to Bhagavan Swayam. All the other incarnations proceed from Lord Vishnu. Srila Prabhupada ki Jaya. So, Vitrasura has appeared on the scene. He's crushing the demigods. They offer prayers to the Lord to appear before them. The Lord appears before them along with his associates. And then they begin to offer him sweet prayers. Very, actually, pure devotional in nature. Although the desire was not a pure devotional desire, as in this verse particularly is indicating. The verses themselves are very steeped in pure devotional understanding, which the demigods also possess, although they don't possess the desire for pure devotional service. So in this particular verse, they refer to the Lord as a couple of things here, using some adjectives to refer to the Lord. They refer to him first as Tri Bhuvana Atma Bhavana. So they say that the Lord is the shelter of the 3 worlds because he's the super soul of the 3 worlds. We've already discussed this in previous class. Just as fire is the support for heat and light. Heat and light can have no existence independent of fire. Yes, you understand? Fire is the substratum that supports heat and light. So in the same way, the super soul is the support for this whole universe, being an energy of the super soul. So the 3 worlds cannot exist without the support of the Supreme Lord as the super soul. So therefore he is called as Tri Bhuvana Atma Bhavana. Understand? So you are the support for the three worlds. This three worlds is the important point for the demigods. So the next word they refer to him as is Trivikrama. Trivikrama is a word for Lord Vamandev. Trivikrama means step. So his steps cover the tree, the three worlds. So when this particular name of the Lord is very important for the demigods, because right now their interest is getting back the three worlds from the control of the demons. So they're particularly referring to the Lord as Trivikrama. Why? Because as Lord Vamandev, he conquered the three worlds, took it back from Bali Maharaj, who was a demon, and gave it back to the demigods. So they're saying Trivikrama. Remember that pastime you did? That was a good pastime. We like that one. And in that way, their desires are coming out. Trivikrama, you are the you showed your prowess by conquering the three worlds, taking it back from Bali Maharaj, your demon, and giving it back to the Devatas. And they're implicitly saying, we need you to do that one again. That pastime should be performed again. Then they refer to him as Trinayana, which Prabhupada is translated here as O maintainer and seer of the three worlds. Again, because he's the super soul, he's a seer. And then Triloka Manohara Anubhava. So, O you who are perceived as the most beautiful within the three worlds. So there's another name that they're referring to the Lord, that you are the most beautiful form in the three worlds. So here, in all their adjectives in describing the Lord, the three worlds is what's been important for them. And they're implicitly asking the Lord to take back the three worlds from the possession of the demons, who are now conquered by Vitrasura, and give it back to the demigods. Understand? That's their implicit desire. So they were Trivikrama. Remember that? You who are beautiful in the three worlds. You are the shelter of the three worlds. You who are the support of the three worlds. Therefore, you can give the three worlds to us. Having glorified the pure devotees in the previous verse, now they're expressing that they are also devotees, but they're a low-grade devotee, and therefore they have these material desires that they want fulfilled. So then after using these adjectives to explain the Supreme Lord, they begin to say, Vibhutaya, Ditija, Danuja, Adhaya. That the demigods, the demons, the human beings, they are all vibhutis of the Lord. Vibhuti means basically a Shakti of the Lord. They are all expansions of yourself. The devas, men, demigods, demons, they're actually all expansions of yourself. And therefore, naturally, they are all dear to you in a sense, being expansions of yourself. Just like in a sense, your limbs are expansions of your body. And so naturally, if anything happens to your finger, then you care about that, isn't it? If something happens to my finger, you don't care about it. But if something happens to your finger, it can really take up the consciousness, isn't it? Just like if you get a little, what do you call it? Paper cut, like a little paper cut on your finger. Whole day you'd be like disturbed. If suppose you get paper cut right before Bhagavatam class, then the whole Bhagavatam class you'd be only thinking about the paper cut, not thinking about the class, isn't it? So why? Because this finger is very intimate to you, because it's an expansion of your body. Understand? So in a similar way, all the devas, the demons, also the human beings, animals, etc., they are all expansions of your vibhutis. And therefore, in a sense, they are all dear to you. But they're all dear to you. But it is the demons have now the word uses here upakrama samaya. Samaya means the time. So the time for the activities of the demons is not proper. They've taken over possession of the three worlds, and this is not their time to flourish. So when this has happened in the past, when the demons have taken over possession of the universe or the earthly planet, then what happens when the demons are prominent? What happens? Okay, irreligion spreads, and then? The Lord comes, yes. So then they say that here. Swa atma mayaya suranara migra mishrita jalachara akritibi. So by your own, when the demon's enterprise is spreading, upakrama samaya, when the demon's enterprise is spreading, then at that time the Lord makes an appearance. Swa atma mayaya. His appearance is not a form of Prakriti. Like our forms are an amalgamation of the elements of Prakriti. But Krishna comes by Swa Atma Maya, by his own spiritual energy. He descends into this world. Krishna says the same thing in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4. So his appearance is not by his form, and appearance in this world has nothing to do with the material Prakriti, but rather it's a descent of his transcendental form composed of spiritual energy. And those forms take on are of different types. Sura means demigods. So you have a form as a demigod, as Vamandev. Nara, you have a form as a human being, as Lord Krishna and Ramchandra. Mriga. Mriga means you have a form as animals, such as Varahadev. Understand? Mishrita. Mishrita means mixture. Mishra means mixture. You have these mixed forms also, like Nishingadev, Hayagriva, Jalachara, and you have these aquatic forms. You appear. So at that time when the enterprise of the demons is spreading, at that time you make your appearance to your spiritual energy in these various forms. And then what does Krishna do when he makes his appearance? He kills them or chastises them, understand? Paritranaya sadhuna vinashaya chadushkritam, isn't it? To deliver the sadhus and to chastise or kill the demons, isn't it? Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, this is why he makes his appearance. So they're reminding Krishna of this point. They're saying, so you make your appearance in these various forms by your spiritual energy. Why? Yata aparadam. So according to their offenses, according to the offenses of the demons, enterprise, dandam, you punish them. Huh? Dandadara, O supreme chastiser. They're calling him not to bring out that feature of the Lord. Just like someone may come up to you and say, you are very intelligent, and then they have some very smart question, or you're really good at washing the pots, like that, to glorify you, to bring out that quality in you, maybe you're not feeling inclined to wash the pots, so they say, oh, you who are best of pot washers, and then you feel very inspired. Yeah, oh, thank you. I try to follow Prabhupada's standard, make sure there's any spot left in the pot. Yes, yes. Therefore, can you go and wash the pots? Like that. So they want to bring out that quality in you. They may glorify you. So they're in a similar way. The demigods are referring to the Supreme Lord as Dandadhara, O Supreme Chastiser. So they're interested in that feature of the Lord. That's what they're saying. We're interested in this feature. So according to their offenses, you punish those demons. Danda arta, you award them punishment according to the degree of their offense. Understand? O Supreme Chastiser. And therefore, Avam enam. Avam means therefore, enam, this one, Vitrasura. He's also such a demon who's needing some chastisement right now. Therefore, can you chastise this one? This says here, this one. We're not praying for our just to glorify you, of course. That's an extra bonus, but we're really praying so you can chastise this one over there, Vitrasura, who's also such a demon whose enterprise is spreading very forcefully, and therefore can you chastise this one over there, Vitrasura. Jahi, please kill this son of Twashta. So that's their prayer, understand? So they're desiring the three worlds, and what is the impediment to their getting the three worlds? Vitrasura. And therefore, O Lord, who appears to chastise demons, quite often you've done this in the past, so please appear again and chastise this one, Vitrasura, so that we can gain back the three worlds. Understand? So this is a very typical psychology of conditioned entities. And the demigods are also conditioned souls. Although they may be great amongst the conditioned souls, they're also conditioned souls. So they exhibit the very same base mentality of any conditioned soul. And what is that base mentality? As conditioned souls, we exist in this world as enjoying agents. We want to enjoy, or we exist in this world in terms of exploiting it. So here's an opportunity for enjoyment or exploitation, and here's an impediment to that opportunity. And what happens when the impediment comes? What happens when you are trying to enjoy and there's some impediment? What happens to your mind? Frustrated. And also that impediment becomes your enemy, isn't it? This is my enemy and I have to conquer over it. I have to destroy it, isn't it? This is very base psychology of conditioned life that is also exhibited by the demigods. what we want. We want the three worlds. And what is the obstacle to our getting the three worlds? Vitrasura. So therefore, Supreme Lord, you please remove that obstacle so that I will be able to enjoy without any impediment. Very base psychology of conditioned life. We all think in the same way as well. When there's we want to enjoy and there's some impediment, then we feel frustrated. We want the Lord to remove that impediment. We pray to the Lord. In fact, if you go to India, oftentimes you'll see that in like most taxis, it's not only taxis everywhere really, but it's just something I particularly noticed in the taxis. All the taxis will have like a Ganesh Murti in it. Well, Ganesh Murti is understood. Ganesh is a demigod who's understood to be the remover of obstacles. Obstacles to material enjoyment. So you have in all these cars and all these businesses, you have one Ganesh Murti will be there. Please remove this obstacle so that I can enjoy without any impediment. Very base psychology of conditioned life. And this is also being exhibited by the Devatas. So then Prabhupada's purport points out that this is a difference between real devotion or an akama devotee and a mixed devotee, or one who is not completely pure. So kama, of course, means desire. So you have, or lust. We generally translate it as lust. So you have the sakama devotees. That means those who are filled up with lusty desires. And then you have akama devotees, those who have no lusty desires, or no desires for exploitation. And others, sakama, full of desires for exploitation. Which one are you? Sakama? All of sakama. Some comma. Isn't it? Full of lusty desires, isn't it? How about you? We have a guess. You have a lot of lusty desires too? Yes. Many lusty desires are there. A lot of lusty desires we have. So, what happens when our lusty desires are frustrated? What happens to you when your lusty desire is frustrated? You become mad, isn't it? Frustrated. No, you be peaceful. You're peaceful. No. That's not possible. If lusty desires are frustrated, then you become dejected in the mode of ignorance. You become depressed. Just for example, boy wants girl. This classic example, anyone can understand. Boy wants girl, girl rejects boy. Then boy goes into depression. That's if he's in the mode of ignorance. No, this is reality. This is in the mode of ignorance. If he's in the mode of passion, then he becomes aggressive. I will have it by any cost, and he may become violent. That mode of passion. He may take to rape or take to murder. Such things go on in the mode of passion. And mode of goodness doesn't really happen generally. Otherwise, mode of goodness, you can be a little detached. Right? It didn't work out. So generally, ignorance and passion is predominant in the psychology of conditioned souls. So when their lusty desires are frustrated, they become dejected, or they become aggressive, violent. So those are the sakama devotees. They're full of lusty desires, and therefore, like the demigods here, there's some impediment to their enjoyment. They're frustrated. They go to the Supreme Lord to please remove the impediment so that they can enjoy without restriction. Whereas the kama devotees, there is no desire. They don't exist in this world as enjoying agents. They have no desire to exploit the world. So when there are frustrating obstacles that come up in the course of their activities in this world, they remain unfrustrated by that because there's no desire for enjoyment. If there's no desire for enjoyment, you can never really be frustrated by the obstacles that appear in the material world because you know that this world is not meant for your enjoyment. If you know that the world is not meant for your enjoyment, rather, at one level of consciousness, you understand that the world is meant for our rectification. On another level of consciousness, you can understand that the world is meant for Krishna's enjoyment. And everything in this world is meant as paraphernalia for his enjoyment. There's different levels of development in the culture of Krishna consciousness. In the preliminary level, we can understand that this world is meant for our rectification. We hear it is often compared to a prison house. In a prison house, you go to prison, why? To eat nicely, to work out in the gym and get buff, so you don't have anything else to do? No, you go to a prison to be reformed. So then, on the lower level of the culture of developing spiritual consciousness, one understands the world as a place of reform. And so when things are happening, then there is no frustration because you understand that this is part of the reforming process. You can understand that anything that is happening to me is actually coming from me. It is, in other words, we understand that whatever is taking place around us is taking place due to my activities previously. So I am the cause of my own suffering and enjoyment in this world. So if someone is enjoying this world, it is a result of pious activity. If someone is suffering in this world, it's the result of impious activity. So the environment is really an expansion of my own activity. Understand? It's because it results from my own activity. So a person who is in, seriously? Someone who is in spiritual consciousness, he takes responsibility for whatever is happening to him. And therefore, he does not blame the environment. So the natural state of the conditioned soul is when there's some obstacle in the environment, then the environment is to be blamed and everyone else in the environment is to be blamed. But I'm okay, and it has nothing to really do with me. And even if we know theoretically from hearing from sadhus that it's my karma, that's a less significant point. Yeah, I know it's my karma, but... And then whatever comes out of the butt is what's really in the heart. But, if he hadn't did that to me, if that wasn't there, then that wouldn't have happened and so on. So the tendency of conditioned life is to blame the environment and to blame others in the environment. As a result of doing so, they remain absorbed in their karmic reactions. And the result of being absorbed in your karmic reactions is you receive more of the same. Right? You understand? If you become absorbed in your karmic reactions in the form of being absorbed in the environment, what's taking place in the environment, taking it very seriously, then the result is that you get more of the same. Right? You understand? You get more of the same. It means you're absorbed in the environment, means so something bad is happening to you. So you become absorbed in that something bad. And what is the result of being absorbed in something bad? You act out. You try to defend that situation. You try to protect yourself from the situation excessively. So your consciousness becomes absorbed in that. And what do you get for that absorption? You get more of the same. Krishna says in the Gita, at whatever state of consciousness you're in at the time of death, that state you will attain without fail. So you'll simply get more of the same. So this happens to those who are Sakama devotees. For those who are Akama devotees, when the environment appears to be acting out, they see that only it is Krishna who has come in the form of the environment to rectify me. Bunjana evatma kritam vipakam. Because I have done some improper activity, so Krishna has appeared in the form of this environment to rectify that improper mentality. Classic example is Parikshit Maharaj. He was cursed to die in 7 days by a Brahmin boy. So how did he take that? The first thing he said is that the Supreme Lord has kindly appeared before me in the form of a curse of a Brahmin boy. Why did he do that too? Because he saw that I was excessively attached to material householder life. So he knew that by coming in this form, that attachment would be broken, and I would fully take shelter of his lotus feet. Right? If Krishna comes in his cowherd boy form, oh, that's cute. You don't take it very seriously, right? You come to deities and you see the deities are smiling. That form you don't take serious. Spiritual life. When you see deity, you take spiritual life very seriously? No, you don't take seriously. He admits. See, we all admit, isn't it? No, we don't take spiritual life very seriously. Jaya, nice. We pray all nonsense things, and we think the deity is smiling and blessing all our nonsense things also. I often say that sometimes you think the deity is smiling, but maybe he's laughing. You're taking it in the wrong way. So you say some stupid prayer, you think the deity is smiling and blessing you. But actually he's laughing. Look at this fool. He doesn't even know that his current reactions are about to fructify and is going to slam him. But they just look like they're smiling, so you take it in the opposite way. You think, oh, encouragement is coming. So from this form of the Supreme Lord, you do not take Krishna consciousness seriously, oftentimes, especially for Sakama. We're talking about devotees here who have many material desires to be fulfilled. So Krishna says, okay, this form you don't take so seriously, so let me come in another form. In the form of your wife leaving you, the form of your children being taken away from you, the form of all your friends dropping you, the form of you losing your job. Let me come in that form. What do you think of this form? And then immediately you have no other shelter but Krishna. And Krishna's like, yes. This is always the reality, but now he's helping one to realize that. So if you are Sakama, when Krishna takes on these other forms in the environment, you don't become favorable. You become distressed, and you pray to the Supreme Lord to please Don't do like this. Do it another way. Fulfill my material desires. So it is, anyway, so the point that we're getting here is that it is difficulty that really brings out what type of devotee that we are. Understand? It is the obstacle or the adversity that really brings out what type of devotee we are. So many times we live in the world of our mind. No one actually lives in the real world. We live in our mental world. All right? It looks like we're all living in this room right now, but we're not living in this room. We're all in our minds, isn't it? So we live in a world created by our mind. And in that world, of course, we're the center of attention. We're the king. We're the boss. Everything orbits around us in that world. So oftentimes, because of this mentality of conditioned life, we tend to think ourselves in a devotional realm, we tend to think ourselves to be as great souls. However subconscious it is that it comes up, especially if you start having a little bit of prowess in spiritual practice. You start coming, you're like showing excellent attendance in the programs that say you're able to sit down and chant all your rounds without moving and sit up straight and close your eyes. Then you feel that I'm becoming spiritually powerful and having an influence. Or you're showing some success in some areas. So then, and our mind will say that you are such a great devotee. You're a great devotee. You're the best devotee, actually. And that way the mind tends to intoxicate us. But then it is adversity that really brings out what type of devotee we actually are. And that's where we're getting the difference between a Sakama and Akama devotee is how they respond to adversity in the environment. So a really classic example are the gopis or the wives of the Yagna Brahmanas. When the wives of the Yagna Brahmanas, when Krishna wanted something to eat, Krishna told his coward boyfriends to go to the Yagya Brahmanas. They did not give Krishna any food. So the coward boys came back very disturbed. Krishna said, don't worry, go to the wives of the Yagna Brahmanas. As soon as the wives heard that Krishna was hungry, they took all the foodstuffs that were meant for the yagya and immediately brought it to Krishna in the middle of the night. That was a very adverse situation because by leaving their husbands, they were considered like prostitutes. That's how strict the culture was. It's a very conservative culture. If a woman was gone for more than, in the nighttime especially, for any amount of time, then she's considered more or less like prostitute. No one will take her after that. So that was an adverse situation that you'll be totally rejected. And that's very hard. I mean, I don't know how many of you ever experienced to any degree what it might feel like to be socially rejected. I guess to some degree we experience it as devotees when we go outside with our little ponytails and so on in our dress. We experience to some degree what it might feel like to be socially rejected. But social rejection is very intense because conditioned jivas especially, we need a sense of belongingness in order to function. If you don't feel that you belong, then it becomes very difficult for a soul to function in such a society where they don't feel they belong. So then social rejection is very intense, but that adverse situation they were able to conquer over. Why? For the pleasure of Krishna. Similarly, they were going in the middle of the night where there were dangerous animals. Kamsa had demons always on the lookout. And all those adverse situations, they only knew that Krishna wants some food. That was their only interest. So later on, when Krishna sends the wives of Yagna Brahmanas back to their husbands, the husbands began glorifying the wives for their great devotion and so on. And later on, they also wanted to go and see Krishna, perhaps to offer their apologies and so forth. But they were not able to do so. Why? Because they were scared of Kamsa and his man in the middle of the night. They thought it too dangerous. Their hearts were possessed by fear. So here you have a very simple and classic example of the difference between a Sakama devotee and an Akama devotee. The Akama devotee means that he has no desire other than desire to satisfy Krishna at whatever cost. And therefore, when adversity comes toward such a devotee, he sees only opportunity to please his beloved. He becomes enthusiastic. Whereas the Sakama devotees, when adversity appears in the environment, then they immediately lose their enthusiasm and they become gripped by fear. Fear is a result of not having really surrendered our all and all to Krishna. Because Krishna says for one who is surrendered to him, there is no question of fear. Mashuchaha, don't worry, don't fear, don't hesitate. So for one who is actually surrendered to Krishna, there could be no question of fear. As such, a debilitating emotion which keeps us from acting in relationship to Krishna. That's what fear is. So then the devotees who are Akama, they don't exhibit such debilitating emotional effects. They only have one emotion, in the sense that that emotion being what will be pleasing to Krishna. And so when adversity appears before them, they're able to easily overcome that by the intensity of their desire to please Krishna. Whereas the Sakama devotees, when difficulty appears in the environment, they're not able to function. They become debilitated, usually because of their excessive absorption in the difficulty. In that way, Prabhupada's pointing out in this verse the difference between Sakama and Akama devotees. So the demigods here, of course, are Sakama devotees. Here's something they want to enjoy, the three worlds. Here's the obstacle, Vitrasura. Therefore, my dear Lord, please remove the obstacle to our enjoyment so we can enjoy. So that is not pure devotional consciousness, although it is a consciousness we may exhibit at the present moment. So we want to cultivate the pure devotional type, and we can do so simply by hearing about the pure devotees and how they respond to the various difficult situations that appear before them. In fact, if anyone studies the Bhagavatam, that's all you'll be reading, because every pastime in the Bhagavatam is basically devotees in distress. And you see how they respond in a situation. So by absorbing your consciousness and these vibrations of the Bhagavatam, then gradually you will become a Kama. You will begin to respond as these devotees respond by association with them through the process of sound vibration. But because most of the times we as devotees don't seem to have enough time for hearing about the devotees in the Bhagavatam, as a result, we remain Sakama devotees. So when we're dealing with these situations, we don't know how to actually respond because our hearts have not been purified by the excessive drinking of the nectar of Harikatha and the Bhagavatam, which will edify our intellect. And so when placed in such situations, we will respond like those we associate with, namely the persons in the Bhagavatam. So if we're interested in becoming a Kama devotees, we need only absorb our consciousness in this Harikatha, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and of course devotees in general who are advanced in Krishna consciousness. Then we will become a Kama. Are there any questions, comments? Anyone with that? Yeah. I went on longer than I desired, but I'm sorry for that. Yes. Well, in the higher planetary systems, there are forms of the Lord that exist there. Just like here, we have the deity form. So in the higher planetary systems, there are forms of the Lord that are moving and so on. Just like we have our deity here, they have their deities there. But the deities in the upper planetary systems, they will offer things to the deity. The deity will actually take it. So if you read Bhagavatam, you can read about the various forms of the Lord in these various higher planetary systems. And also what they're implicitly saying in that particular statement is that manifest that beautiful form that will manifest a beautiful form. What is that beautiful form? That form that will give us back the three worlds. That form is beautiful. Because that is their desire. They have to be fulfilled. So whatever form will give us back the three worlds, manifest that beautiful form. You understand? And not that all the forms are beautiful, yes, but this form is particularly beautiful. What form is that? That one that's going to give us back the three worlds. Just like, for example, you go to Kishori to have some desire fulfilled. And Kishori doesn't fulfill it. So, okay, you're also beautiful, but I'm going to try Gornitai out now. You go to Gornitai, they also don't fulfill the desire. So you say, you're also nice, but let's try Jagannath out. Then you go to Jagannath, Baladev Subhadra, and then they fulfill your desire. You say, you are most beautiful. This form is beautiful. Why? Because it's directly connected to your desire for sense gratification. Understand? So that's the feeling behind the prayer. That this form is most beautiful. What form is that? That form that will remove this obstacle and give us fulfill our desire. That's the idea there. You can talk into the microphone. Is it on? No, is it not working? Okay. Well, why, in spite of seeing the deity of the Lord or seeing the Supreme Lord face to face, They are not able to give up their desire for sense gratification. Because there's in one sense, especially in the material world, there's a difference between seeing and cognizing. You know what this word cognition means, right? Cognition means like to be aware of something. So there's a difference between seeing and having awareness of something. There's actually the two, although we tend to conflate the two ideas, but there is a distinction actually. It's a little subtle. For example, I've done this exercise many times where here, I'll ask this man. What is your name? Yeah. Dilip. Dilip, I have a question for you. Do you see Gregory in this room anywhere? No. This is Gregory right there. No. this white kid. So this is Gregory. So here's a person sitting right in front of him. So he sees this form. It's not that he didn't see this form, but he didn't have any awareness of it because he didn't know who Gregory was. So there's a subtle difference between seeing something and having awareness of it or cognizing it. Understand? So in order to cognize it, you need to have knowledge and other factors come into play. So for the souls, and so in the material world, when the soul is seeing the material world, he sees it through his subtle body. He doesn't see it directly. He sees it through a subtle body, and the subtle body has got all sorts of contamination in it, prejudices that we've gained from so many lives before and in this life. So for example, sometimes you'll see a kid who may exhibit some sort of racist mentality from the very outset, even though his parents haven't taught him that. So obviously when he looks upon a particular individual, he doesn't just see that individual, that body. What the eyes will see is just a shape, a color, and a size. That's all the eyes actually see. But then the racist person sees this, some bad word, this blackie or whitey or whatever. He sees something, so he doesn't just see a body, a shape and size, but he sees according to his subtle body. So when the subtle body is filled with that sort of contamination, he doesn't see that object for what it is, but he sees it according to what's fixed in his mentality, the prejudices. Does it make sense? So unless those prejudices are removed, he cannot see the object for what it actually is, its self-manifesting nature. You understand? So similarly, when Krishna appears before the conditioned souls, although they may see his form, they cannot cognize it without having their subtle bodies purified by bhakti yoga, or Kapila Dev even uses the language dissolved by bhakti yoga. So oftentimes we express this by saying more important than seeing the Lord is developing bhakti for the Lord or loving the Lord. You have to act so you don't just see with your eyes, but you see with devotion. In other words, you see with senses that are infused with bhakti. Or saying another way, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, you can only see the Supreme Lord for what he is when your cognitive faculties are purified by devotion to Krishna. So unless and until one's cognitive faculties, namely the mind, the intelligence, the ahankar, is purified by devotion to Krishna, then you cannot see Krishna for what he is. Of course, it is possible to do so if Krishna just empowers you, and just invest you with some Shakti and boom, you just see Krishna for what he is. But generally, Naham Prakasha Sarvasya, Yogamaya Samavrita, the souls are covered by my Yogamaya, which basically essentially means they're gross and subtle bodies. And therefore, they cannot appreciate the object for what it is, the beauty of Krishna for what he is. So they see only in terms of their prejudices fixed in their subtle body. So what is the prejudice fixed in the subtle body of the demigods? In this case, I want to enjoy the three worlds. And therefore, they're seeing Krishna in terms of that desire for enjoyment and not for Krishna for what he is. You understand? So more important, we express this in a more simple language by saying more important than seeing God is to love God or develop real bhakti for the Lord like that. Does that make sense? I hope that little roundabout way of saying that. Yeah, so Michael has a question. They're not duplicitous. These prayers are not duplicitous. As I already mentioned, most of the prayers that they're are expressing here are very steeped with pure devotional understanding, although they don't have pure devotional desire. Actually, their prayers are very far from duplicitous, very honest. They're saying that we are low-grade devotees, we have material desires, we want this desire fulfilled. That is very honest. They're not saying, please give me pure devotion to you. In fact, at the end of these prayers, says our acharyas, because the expression of prayers are very pure devotional, the demigods got concerned that maybe he might give us bhakti. Because we're expressing such pure devotional prayers, he might give us bhakti. We got to be careful. So then they specifically said, we don't really want that. We want this one. They wanted to make sure that the Supreme Lord understood that this is really what we want. Although their expression was very pure devotional, but we really want this one. Don't mistake us that we want something else. We really want this one. And so their prayers are not at all duplicitous. They're just, their desires materialistic, as it were. They're not. The Lord cannot be manipulated. They're saying that these are the features that we're appreciating of your personality. The ones that involve giving us the three worlds. So they're appreciating the Lord for that. These are devotees. So they have faith in the Supreme Lord. They have knowledge of the Supreme Lord. As these prayers indicate, and also Lord Narayana, when he responds to them, he will glorify their prayers also. It's steeped with deep devotional understanding. They just have material desires. And so because they have faith in the Supreme Lord, they're steeped with deep knowledge of the Supreme Lord, they know very well they can't manipulate the Supreme Lord. That's not possible. With the Supreme Lord being Antaryami, the indwelling soul of everyone, it's impossible to manipulate him. So they wouldn't even try to manipulate him. They're just expressing these are the features that we're appreciating for these reasons. Sorry, we're materialistic devotees like that. Understand? Yeah. Yes. Yes. Opportunities are blocked by these difficult situations. Okay, I get it. So here Prabhupada is mentioning that whenever a devotee encounters any difficult situation, he understands that it's a result of my karma. But in the case of a devotee rendering some service to the Supreme Lord, if some difficulty should come up, and he shall demonstrate frustration and toward the difficulty because it is becoming an obstacle to his service to the Supreme Lord, is that frustration justified? You could say probably, arguably, the situations are incredibly nuanced. So I'm sure in certain situations one could say yes. Anger is certainly justified in certain situations. As we know, if the devotees are being blasphemed or Vishnu is being blasphemed, the devotee may just demonstrate some anger and so on. So in certain situations, frustration is a quality that a devotee will manifest in relationship to his service to the Supreme Lord. The basic idea here, though, is that suppose he's rendering some service and some challenging situation shall come up, then he will become more enthusiastic to fulfill the service requirement in the face of that adverse situation. So I gave the example of the wives of the Yagna Brahmanas, or the example of the gopis. Krishna's flute call comes, and now that flute call immediately creates an adverse situation, actually, isn't it? Because before Krishna calls the gopis with the flute, there is no adversity. Everyone's just serving nicely as, humble wife in their home, isn't it? And serving their husbands, serving their children, serving their family, and so on. But as soon as Krishna plays a flute, that flute call creates the adverse situation, isn't it? You understand? Just like before we were trying to go for Krishna consciousness, there was no adversity as such, let's say with our family members and so on. Everything was maybe nice and dandy. And as soon as we say we're joining Krishna consciousness, then immediately an adverse situation is created with our families. For example, that's happened to many of us at least, where our families are become frustrated and bewildered, and in certain cases, devotees have to sneak around and do all sorts of things. So the call of Krishna consciousness, as it were, Prabhupada uses this language, the call of Krishna consciousness immediately creates an adverse situation. Or let me use a more subtle and broader example. As conditioned souls, we were normally enjoying our senses without any problem. Like, nothing was wrong with that, and it was perfectly natural and okay. I often mention when I first heard the word sense gratification, I asked the devotees, I said, what is sense gratification? Because I didn't know. I looked it up in the dictionary, I couldn't find it. I didn't realize it was like a compound word. I thought it was one word, and so I didn't find it. I asked the devotees what is sense gratification. Then they explained to me what is sense gratification. I said, what's wrong with that? That's totally natural, And Prabhupada slamming sense gratification again and again and again. So here I am, a conditioned soul, nicely enjoying my senses before I read Prabhupada's books, And then all of a sudden, you read Prabhupada's books, and the call of Krishna consciousness is made. The call to Krishna consciousness, I should say, rather. And then that call to Krishna consciousness immediately creates an adverse situation, adversity. For example, you see an object of sense enjoyment. Normally, you will go to enjoy that, or you will at least try. But then the call to Krishna consciousness tells you that that's wrong, isn't it? So then immediately, because of that call to Krishna consciousness, adversity is generated in the heart. What is the adversity? I want to enjoy, but the call to Krishna consciousness says that's not proper. So immediately that call to Krishna consciousness generates the adversity in the heart, isn't it? So in that way, that's a little bit more subtle example. The call to Krishna consciousness creates adversity. So then what does the devotee do in the face of adversity? He meets it with perseverance to please the Supreme Lord, as the gopis do, as we as practitioners also do, whenever we resist the objects of sense gratification for the pleasure of Krishna. Krishna prite bhoga tyag. And that's not a very easy thing to do, and I'm sure we have days where we fail miserably, and then we have other days where we are successful. So in that way, this adversity we're meeting with adversity at every step of the way. And then the pure devotees, of course, they meet it with perseverance to serve the senses of Krishna. So that's the sense of which this is explained. Although in certain situations, it could be argued that a devotee can be justified in his anger. For an example, Prabhupada Lila with the Juhu temple and Mr. Nair was there creating so many obstacles for Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada would show frustration, but he also showed increased enthusiasm to get the Juhu temple. And then after Mr. Nair left his body, Srila Prabhupada was like Jaya. I think he said Nishingadev got him, isn't it? Srila Prabhupada told that Nishingadev took care of Mr. Nair. You might not want to tell that story on a Sunday feast with a lot of newcomers, because they might be bewildered how a sadhu could think in this way. But Prabhupada said so in certain situations, certainly a pure devotee. But that frustration is never based on his own sense gratification, so that's what you also can understand. It's based on someone creating obstacles for Krishna, or Krishna's devotees, etc., like that. Yeah. Okay, so we see the residents of Vrindavan, the highest devotees, are common devotees. They are sometimes pray for protection or self-preservation. Well, there's basically, how I'm going to express this, there are more or less a couple of levels of exhibition of such consciousness when one is praying for protection or self-preservation. On a lower level of consciousness, one is praying that the Lord protects the consciousness of Krishna consciousness, that whatever little bit you have. So the devotee may pray for that protection. So the protection is not for the material situation, or please, I have also so much money, please protect that. But it's praying for that I will remain Krishna consciousness despite the adverse situations that are coming upon me. Because the nature of adversity faced by a lower level devotee is that he might forget Krishna. So the devotee may pray for protection, like in the Ishapanishad, where he prays, please remember all that I've done for you. Now, why would the devotee pray for that? That sounds like a fruit of desire. But he's saying that at the time of death, my mind may become overwhelmed by these impressions of material existence, and therefore at the time of death, I will not be able to remember you. Therefore, please, you remember me. So in that sense, he may pray. But a higher level of a devotee's praying for such protection or even self-perseverance, especially in the case of the residents of Braja, is that the forms of the devotees give pleasure to Krishna. And so they're praying for protection and self-preservation is not for themselves, but they're praying that Krishna protects his sense gratification, essentially. Because these forms are bringing happiness to Krishna. And their concern is only for the happiness of Krishna. And because these forms are bringing Krishna happiness, therefore, my dear Lord, you please protect this form. Why? So it can continue to give you pleasure. So that's a little subtle and very high level of exhibition of consciousness for which a devotee may pray for self-preservation. They're basically essentially telling Krishna, you protect your sense gratification. Because ultimately love, or prema, means the desire to please Krishna's senses. And so since this form is giving Krishna pleasure, therefore you protect it. Just like the gopis, they would dress very nicely. Why? Because it brings Krishna happiness, for example. Whereas we also dress very nicely. Why? With the hope that we can attract someone on the other side of the room or something like that. In this way, different levels of consciousness are being exhibited. So the gopis, they also come in the temple room decked out, and some materialistic gopis, they also come decked out, but they're not the same position. One person wants to please the eyes of Krishna, and someone wants to please the eyes of Prabhu across the room. And they do so also, because the Prabhu wants to be satisfied. In that way, different levels of consciousness there. In the case of the residents of Vrindavan, they want Krishna. Their forms are bringing Krishna so much pleasure, therefore, please protect that. That's how I understand it. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Any more discussion? No? Okay then. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jaya.